Welcome. Welcome to the coaching circle. Really, really glad to have you back. It's very exciting to have these sessions, to have you with us, and welcome to you all. We are coaches in different areas, and we come to have discussions with each other, with you, and talk about life. So this is not scripted, a casual conversation, and feel welcome. We shall start with a round of introductions, and I shall start with myself. I am Shiro. I'm an inner work coach and the host of the podcast Lost in Our 40s. You can find my content at lostinour40s.com. Nikki, would you like to go next?
Yep, I'm Nikki, and I've got a YouTube channel all about performance anxiety and how to get it.
Over to you, Alex.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I'm an inner work coach, and I talk about things like emotional self-regulation, confidence, intuition, all that fun stuff. And I have a website and a YouTube channel.
Great. On to you, Diamond.
Hi, my name is Diamond. I'm also an inner work coach, and I'd like to talk about things like digital detoxing, mindfulness. I want to equip everyone with a good meditation practice. And if you're interested in that, you can find me on my website, Shine Bright Mindset.
Perfect. So welcome all. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. This is the coaching circle. Okay. So our topic today is about letting go of the past. Before we started on this call, we were just talking about the full moon and its effects. And I'll let, do you want to talk to that, Alex? Or am I putting you on the spot?
Sure. I think the full moon was this past Thursday, which was like 2 days ago. So anyway, what I heard is like with the full moons, like old energies come up, like old patterns, and people tend to act more impulsive during those times. And in those moments, it's like we kind of really have to double down on our inner work, and we're all human. Sometimes we'll revert back. I mean, for me, from time to time that happens, but I think I'm just like more aware of it as it happens versus getting dragged into it, is what I'm saying. So, with that full moon, as I mentioned, it just brings up those old energies, and that just gives you the opportunity now to either go backwards or choose a different path. And I look at it more of an empowered way versus a negative reactive thing that is just happening to us. So that's what my take on the full moon. I know people like kind of freak out about it, but I look at it as a little bit of a different opportunity to where we can grow into the version that we want to be.
Yeah, I know Alex and I talked a bit offline, and something you said that I loved was kind of like the feeling like you've like moved back 1 or 2 consciousness levels.
Yeah.
Like when you've made a change and things are just feeling crazy, and you feel like you're like kind of swaying from like the new version that you stepped into and like the previous conscious level. Yeah, that was so well said, and that resonated with me. I've experienced that, especially during this full moon. And yeah, like Alex said, just having the awareness and knowing that's completely normal and kind of just almost like seeing it and either making a better choice or slipping back into it. That's fine, honestly. Either way, just having the awareness and pressing forward and not letting that discourage your change. Yeah, I found it been valuable for me.
Just before moving to you, Nikki, a question for you, Diamond, and because you speak about conscious levels and moving forward and moving back. So to the person listening who has no idea what the conscious levels are and the forward and backwards are, just talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I would say um, when going through a transformation and trying to make changes, you kind of go through like an identity shift. And um, when you kind of step into, so let me try to make this like really practical. Um, I'll talk about food. I always talk about food because that's kind of like a journey that I've been through. So let's say you're trying to like lose some weight or something. Um, I know for me, what's helped me and like just kind of naturally shedding weight and like stepping into the identity that now like loves my body and feels really I don't know, clean and light in my body versus before maybe feeling more bloated and heavy. Um, yeah, I found that when I would, let's say, come across a scenario like seeing donuts or something, or just a scenario where I know an old identity would get like really giddy about it. um, my new identity would kind of like, they would be at war, like, well, I know I like to feel clean and light in my body. I know that. But then, like, the old identity is like, but the donuts are so good. When are you going to get these donuts again? Free donuts? This is like, how could I not? And so, I guess all I'm trying to, to get across here is that it's not the end of the world if I eat the donut. That's fine. No one's going to die if I eat the donut. It's just having the awareness that sometimes when you are kind of going through a change and making some identity shifts, that an old conscious level might arise, and that's totally okay. There's really no wrong choices here. It's more just having the awareness, because having that awareness might empower you to be like, you know what, I'm gonna put the donut down, and I'm gonna maybe come back into my body, maybe drink some tea or eat the donut, see how it makes you feel, and then that can reinforce, oh yeah, that's why I don't eat donuts. Okay, cool reminder, move on. And so there's really no right or wrong. I don't like that sort of black and white thinking. It's more of just trying to illustrate the idea of, yeah, when making changes, or sorry, when kind of meeting a scenario that kind of tests you, um, being aware that you might have some old beliefs and mindsets that might creep in. And yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It absolutely does. Yeah, yeah. Had I cut you off, Nikki? Sorry.
No, no,
Oh, I
No?
didn't even hear. Sorry.
no, no. Yeah, I don't really know too much about the full moon thing. I'll be honest, but just going on from what Diamond was saying about when you're making a change, I think it is really important. I think that's what you were saying, to like have compassion on yourself. That if you do slip back into old ways, it's okay, and it is just a pattern, like a familiar pattern, and that's what your consciousness wants to go to, those familiar patterns. So it's just about becoming aware of that and giving yourself the opportunity to make a different choice. But if you do slip up and you do something that's an old thing, then that's okay. Just be aware of it, and yeah, you can make a better choice. But I think if you are harsh on yourself, then it's going to be more difficult to make the best choice going forward then, because you can't really make that choice from a place of hating on yourself. You've got to make it from a place of love and a place of strength.
Absolutely. I also think that the awareness for me is the key. Being able to see what it is that you have been doing, and then reaching this place in your mind that tells you that this thing I have been doing, I would like to shift. If you go back to your example, Diamond, with the donuts, and I agree with you fully. It might not be necessarily the donuts themselves; they may not be bad or anything like that. But once you've realized that there's a pattern that you've had that you are trying to change, then for me, I think it's really noticing that, especially in the inner work perspective, when
Yeah.
I sabotage myself, when I want a particular thing, but then I keep ending up doing all these other small things. And I'll give you an example. I hope it didn't happen today, but it happens often when when I want to do one particular thing, then instead of doing that thing, I might find 1,000 other little things that creep up. And the 1,000 little things that creep up might be very good things. So the example I have in mind was some Saturday when I wanted to, I don't know if I think I wanted to write or create content. I can't remember what my plan was. But then I wanted to clean the house, and then I wanted to arrange heaven knows what, and then I needed to do this, and then I needed to do that. All very important things. But then it was only when I stopped and physically stopped myself. I say I call myself into a meeting. I sit myself down and I ask myself, what is this really about? Because yes, you can clean the house, but then it's usually like tiny little things that come up, that there's that top corner that I need to reach at with a toothbrush, these things that are not necessarily what you do daily, because what I was trying to do is to get away from the activity. So it takes some level of, I think, self-questioning is what I do. I have a pattern of asking myself questions when I see myself doing things. In that situation, you wanted to write, you haven't written. Why? Because I was cleaning. Yes, but you've gone overboard with your cleaning. Why? Then I realize, aha, it's because there's a fear. I had a fear at the time in terms of writing or whatever. I had a block. So then because of that, I could sit down and then start recognizing the block and move on from that. Mm. Mm.
That's powerful. I also think another example would be regarding, like, let's say, friendships and relationships. So a lot of people find themselves in the same type of dynamic, and you've changed, like you've done the inner work when the type of person you're attracted to changes. So when it comes up, and you come across somebody who you normally would have been attracted to, now you're like, ew, like I would never, but that's when you've grown. Let's say, for example, like some people like it when they love the bad boys. And I'm like, so you like unemotionally available men. Love that for you. But do you love that for you? No, you don't. I think they like this idea that they have to struggle for love. So you really have to get down to like the root of as to why certain dynamics are attractive for you. And if are they serving you? Are you still attracted to the same type of pattern, but in a different body? Um, so it's just being mindful. I feel like even during like the full moon, people might feel like impulsive, and or they might come across somebody that has been a familiar energy to them. And that is kind of during the times where we really have to like kind of double down a little bit more to really get an idea, is this something we want to repeat? Because that's where intuition comes in. And I consciously know, oh, this person may not be good for me, but why am I going against it? My intuition's telling me, no, this person's not good for you, but my mind is like, but like, what if we try this out? Like, what if we give this a chance? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, we already know going into it, so let's not do it. Um, I wouldn't say sometimes we may not have that much self control, or we might not have developed that quite yet. But if you need more information on a specific person or whoever, give it a go. And but the answer will come to you shortly after. I don't believe it's gonna take like months to get to know somebody. I think we kind of get an idea of who somebody is within like a week or two. That's because I've tried to tap into my intuition more, and it kind of guides me. And it's like, you're right, intuition. Like, I'm listening to you now. So that's something that I've been practicing. And I feel like I'll tune into the vibes of somebody and I already know, yes, this is a good person for me, or no, they're not. So I've been practicing that more and more, and I'm glad I'm following it, even though my ego is just like, but why? At the same time, it's like I know what I want from my friendships and relationships. So I want that vision is more important than the past and the old patterns.
You've said something that's brought something to mind from my own experience. How do you how do you know when not to bargain with intuition?
To not to
I always have
bargain.
this. Yeah, exactly. I always have, and the example that came to mind when you were talking just now was dating apps. I got the
Oh
message, stop
God.
using dating apps. And I was like, but how else will I meet anybody? But dating apps, they're convenient, they're there, and da 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 da. And so I went back, and then I think the universe was like, but we told you. So how do you
So
develop the wherewithal to stop to take what you've been told?
so I think it's just like practicing your intuition every day and tapping into that intuitive knowing. If you don't name it, you can't claim it. We're all intuitive. It's just to different levels and degrees. And that's mainly because that's not a skill that we were taught to cultivate when we were younger. So if it's like for me, it's like my intuition has like different layers. They may be like a full body, yes, like I'll feel a pull to do something. Like I really mainly feel that sensation throughout my whole body, kind of like mostly like in my heart, or I'll just feel like this this feeling like it feels right. And if it's a no, it's usually like a gut in my gut and it kind of contracts and it's like this sinking feeling. And if I don't have like a full yes or a full no, it's usually like I need more information. So pause or you could move forward, but the more information is soon to come. So be, mindful of what information and downloads I receive. I do notice with like my intuition lately, it's more of a matter of fact. It's like a yes or a no. It'll tell me I'll get these like downloads, but it's not talking. It's not like over talking, like talking a lot. When I get a lot of verbiage and I get a lot of words, I know I'm overthinking and I'm in my head for that. So I'll try to not make actions from the overthinking place because that's me trying to rationalize or justify certain things. And my intuition's just like a guidance. It's like a download. I have to listen for those downloads to come. So, like I said, it just takes a little bit of practice. And when we kind of get better at that, we're able to feel more confident making bigger decisions, like such as should I leave this relationship? Should I leave this job? And maybe you secretly already knew the answer, but were afraid of it, or weren't confident in taking that action because you weren't sure for certain if that's what you should do. So cultivating that every day, like, should I go out to that party tonight? Should I not go hang out with these people? Or how do I feel like in advance? Like I'll like tune into that and be like, is this something like I want to do? And it's like a yes or a no. And I trust it, you know? As for the dating apps, like you were saying, if your intuition is telling you no, maybe that's for a reason. And trust your gut to whether that's, your gut telling you, your intuition, or if it's your logic mind. But I've never felt called ever to go on those dating apps as if, that just hasn't ever been a thing for me. I'm more of an in-person person. I trust the vibes. I like to read people quickly and in person versus on a picture on an app. You can't really get a good gauge of the interaction based on a picture or just some of the messages. And I've just not a fan of superficial conversations based on a picture alone, So um yeah, you maybe feel called to go to like a singles event, or you might meet somebody that knows somebody, or you might go to like a party from your friends and somebody cool's there. Like just trust your gut on what it's guiding you to do, and the more you do it, the more confidence you'll have in trusting it for the bigger decisions.
Great. Then I want to move this conversation a bit in the same direction, because now we're talking about letting go of the past,
Mm-hmm.
and we've touched on dating. So let's carry on. Letting go of exes. Yes or no? Should yes or no? To what extent? How much? How little? Yeah.
I can tell you about my last experience, how I let go of that person. It is a bit brutal, but basically, I knew in my intuition definitely this wasn't the right person, and then I listed all the reasons why this was not the right person. Absolutely not. And then once I had that information, even though it really, really hurt, like I still had all these feelings for this person, I could say to myself, okay, this is not ever going to be a relationship, and you have to cut this person off. And then what I did, I blocked him from all of my phone, all of my social media, deleted all of his pictures, threw out absolutely everything to do with him. And that was probably after the first week I did that. And then just never looked at any of the social media and never gave him any attention. Obviously, like working through all of the emotional stuff, so like letting all the emotions out. And then the ultimate thing really is forgiving that person as well, just because, excuse me, you know that they're only doing the best they can at their level of consciousness. And like it is really like a child, kind of like a child trapped in like an adult's body kind of thing, like as in like they can only do what they're capable of doing. That sounds a bit mean, like that they're only capable of doing what they've been programmed to do at that time or conditioned to do at that time. The same as I have been as well in the past. So it's just kind of like knowing that that's not really who they really are. They were like acting out of their conditioning. So then like forgiving them for that. So that's kind of how I did that.
Powerful.
I would say the same too. I think that you can't bring in new if you're still holding on to the old. So it's like kind of like you're grasping him or her in your hand, but you want something new, but you got to let this go for something better to come along and
Mm.
trust that everything's working out in your favor and the right people will be into your life and want to stay in your life and want to treat you well and be a good person to you. Because I believe that the right people are going to challenge you, but in a good way. They're not going to be toxic to you, but they're going to healthily, in a healthy way, challenge you to become a better version of yourself. And you can use that as a way to get, defensive or get upset with them. But I think that's the opportunity to dive in deeper into these relationships to have more intimate, better connections. Like, I really do think there's a lot of people in relationships that feel kind of empty because they're not really fully being their authentic self and truly intimate and vulnerable with their partner. And I think they're missing out on such an amazing opportunity to really deeper dive into connecting with somebody. And that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. With my friendships, with my relationships, if it isn't in, like quality friendships and relationships, I have no time for it. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, it's just, it feels so inauthentic, and I just want to stay true to me and what feels right. And yeah, just trust that the right people are going to see that as an opportunity to deeper dive a connection with you. And the right people will. And the wrong ones, they're just going to fall off. And just trust that this is for the better in the unfolding of things, and somehow some way things always work out for you. And if you have that faith, I believe that things do work out somehow some way. And life is so much better living it from that perspective versus like, why me, why is this happening, like choosing to obtain negative beliefs about yourself, like that's let all that go. Let all that go.
Mm.
So yeah, use that as an opportunity to just trust that things are working out for you, even if you can't see it quite yet.
Yeah. Ooh, that just made me think as well. Another thing, I had to tell myself that it wasn't really about me, and it didn't mean that I was like worth less as a person because this person didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. So I think that's important as well.
Okay. So my reflection is that I'll tie it into what you were saying, Diamond, earlier about the levels of consciousness, because I do think there's that. There is, I love relationships for their teaching ability. I feel that relationships really help me level up because I learned so much about myself through all the triggers.
Me too. Me too.
I find in relationships, and I find I do I enjoy them for that purpose, and then because of that as well, tied in. I mean, I needed to be in that space to learn a certain thing. Hopefully I have learned it. That's really the thing. If you don't learn it, they say you keep getting the same tests. Is that what you said, Alex? You keep getting the same tests over and over again until you learn that lesson. So hopefully you learn it and you move on. Because I have been, I mean, I have been in relationships that were really not the best, not healthy, and learning from that and understanding that the way I showed up in that relationship had an impact in the treatment that I got. That if I were more, what's the word? If I stood up for myself more, something along those lines. If I were more, what's that word when you're protecting, when you're defending yourself, or you are your number one fan in the relationship, when you go into a relationship in that way, as opposed to when you go into the relationship as the smaller person, the trying to please, then you will absolutely get different you'll have a different experience. So from that perspective, if this person was there to teach you that lesson, which you hopefully learned, in my case I hope I've learned it now, then there is no reason to hold on, because then you're no longer matched. The level of consciousness has
Yes.
changed. I have grown. So there is no match with this person, because where they are is not where I am anymore, so we are no longer compatible. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to answer your initial question about exes, um, so my first boyfriend that I've ever had, he was great. It was a wonderful relationship, but towards the end of it, we kind of just acknowledged just that. And I think we just had a compassionate view on it. Like, I'm over here with my career, you're still figuring this out. Like, just energetically, like, we're no longer really aligned. And it's taking a lot more effort to kind of like hold on to this than just to kind of let it naturally take the new form that it's very naturally taking. And so with that ex, we decided to break it off, and that was years ago. And we're still like amicable, and we're still friends. And people always question like, how are really just friends? Like, and it's like, yeah, genuinely just friends, because we're not a match. Like, there's no compatibility. We're not. That's not it anymore. We both grew in different ways, and because of that, doors closed, and it could really just be that simple.
Oh, so we seem
Oh.
to have lost Diamond. Think she'll be right back. But yeah, no, I enjoy what she was saying. That's part, and I think it's really beautiful to be able to have that kind of relationship, that understanding, that conversation, to say that, look, we understand that this is no longer going in this direction, and it's fine. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
I I have always said that they would have to be a different version of themselves
Mm,
for us to be a thing again.
mm,
I think it's like I'm no longer that version, so I'm like this version now. So in order for me to even consider anything, like you would have to be a completely different version of yourself. And but are you like that completely different version of you yet? But it takes people growing. We're constantly growing, right? But I rather people grow together. And if they don't have that mentality of growth together, and I think it comes back also to like values and whatnot, you're gonna always fall back onto your values and what's really important to you. And you really have to see like what's more of a priority. Is it your ego or is it the relationship? Because relationships require you to change and to become better versions of yourself. But I don't feel like we have that full awareness when we're younger and we're like, oh, this is just fun and everything. And I don't really think we understand the full impact of what relationships come with and if we don't resolve like past traumas from past people, we bring that into a new relationship and project that onto that significant other, and that's not fair to them. So we really need to take ownership of, past issues and traumas and do a good job about, communicating if there's any triggers and whatnot, and not project that onto their partner because that's not their partner's fault. But it does take communication and vulnerability and being your authentic self for things to truly work out.
Mm. On that, how I'm just pondering two things. I think I want to comment on the levels of consciousness because I think it's something we keep saying. So this week I went to the barber, and I booked an appointment for was it whatever time I booked my appointment for was cutting it close because I had another appointment, and so I reached there an hour earlier, and then I thought that this is meant to be my turn, and he told me no, because he had someone else. He told me no, you booked it for an hour later. Then what I told him was the version of me who booked that appointment at that time must have been really optimistic about being able to make it on time. So then that's when I realized later, when I was thinking about it, I thought maybe he was wondering what version of you, what are you talking about? So just to highlight that when we're talking about levels of consciousness, that's really it. That this idea that we have different versions of ourselves, that there are different paths that we can take at any given moment in time that can grow us or not. And that when we speak of the levels of consciousness, is that when you have worked on yourself, you've been doing some inner work, you have done some introspection, you've been looking at the things that trigger you, and the trigger is these things that take you back to an incident that happened that annoyed you previously and has had you behaving in a particular pattern for a period of time. So when you looked at that trigger, you've worked it out, then you've grown. You're becoming a, how do you put it, your level of consciousness has grown. You are becoming, you're a different version of yourself. You're someone who has learned from that issue, has overcome it, and because of that have grown. So that's, just to cut it down, that's what we are talking about, for the person who's still wondering what is all this about. Yeah, yeah. I did have a point. I was going to ask, yes, triggers. How do we recognize triggers? What is a trigger? How do we see it and say, aha, this is something disturbing me and I'm going to do this with it?
Well, it triggers like a strong emotional response you get to something that's happened externally. And sometimes it seems a little bit extreme given the circumstances. So there, it's like, oh, why did I react so strongly? That could be something like a deeper, core belief or a deeper issue that was brought up. Because two people can look at the same scenario and have two different reactions. And one that has a very strong emotional reaction may feel some type of trigger, like I said, due to a past trauma, core belief, or anything like that. Um, and they have to figure that out on themselves, because if not, they're going to constantly be getting triggered by these same scenarios and feeling like they're victim to it, rather than looking at it from a place of, okay, I'm being triggered right now. Like, how can I choose to handle this differently? So it does take a little bit of self-awareness, but I feel like you and I feel like kind of angry or like really sad, or like something really strong happens, like emotionally. So that's like the first sign that you know you're triggered. And it's usually intense, and not a lot of people might have the same reaction to the same scenario that you just had. So that's probably also another sign as well.
Mm. Yeah. What would I add about triggers? Maybe, do you have examples? What triggers you?
Let's,
Mine is a long list. I'll need to boil it down to.
so, okay, let's talk about it. So for me, I'm really big on like accountability. And like if somebody tells me they're going to do something and they don't do it, I get really annoyed. I get really upset. And I'm like, okay, I'm not a mind reader. If you wanted to not do that or whatever, like it's your responsibility to tell me. So rather than like keep constantly getting triggered about people not having holding on to their word or they're having integrity, I look at it as, do I even want to associate with this type of person? Because maybe one time that might happen, because of the, like circumstances came up and they couldn't because they were sick or whatever the case may be. Use your discernment to really see if that's is like a repeating pattern, like a character flaw with somebody, or is this like a one-time incident? So rather than me forcing people to be accountable and be honest and be truthful and be a better person, I'm going to just remove people with low integrity, low character out of my reality and only associate with people who have better character, um, better morals, better ethics, and things like that. So rather than constantly getting triggered and allowing that behavior from that person, it's like, no, I'm not putting up with this behavior. I'm going to go with other people that will respect me and my time and things like that. So I think with triggers, like we're constantly trying to fix another person sometimes or blame it on another person, but it's like, why are we also in that scenario with that person continuously to still get triggered?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was going to ask you.
Yeah. I think up until recently, I used to really get triggered by people not liking me or disrespecting me. And then I've switched it completely similar to Alex, where I've been like, well, that's told me a lot about you as a person. And maybe it's not me that's the problem. Maybe, either we just are not like aligned to each other, or if you're going to disrespect me, that tells me that you're actually not a very nice person. So I'm like, okay then, so maybe I don't need to have those type of people in my life. And if we just don't align, that's fine. Not everyone needs to like me. It doesn't mean that I'm not a good person because they don't like me. Maybe I don't like them either, or maybe not even don't like, but just don't really get on with each other. So that's fine. And I can find people that I do get on with and that do align with me, and then hang around with those people. So yeah, it's getting to the bottom. Like, I think the reason why that triggered me so much is because I had a very low self-worth. So now that I've got like a lot better self-worth, I can then make the decisions from that place of like loving myself and respecting myself, and being like, well, this is how I feel about myself, and I don't actually care if you don't like me, or if you're going to disrespect me, then you don't have a place in my life.
Absolutely. And I think that also goes with standards too, in like I guess we're going to tie this back to the dating apps and stuff, or just dating. So one person's expectation of somebody, um at the first sign of disrespect, they're just like, I'm done, I'm out. And other people will kind of give people chances, or put up with inconsistent behavior because they think that's what they deserve. And I feel like when you pour back into your own cup, you know, um, loving yourself, respecting yourself, all that stuff, you're gonna have the same standard with friendships, relationships, jobs, things like that. And the more you're in tune with yourself, you can tune into your intuition, and you can almost just like read somebody relatively quick, and you'll be like, yeah, you're trouble. I sense it before even having to talk to you. And that to me is so vital in not having to like waste our time and constantly can be triggered with people when we already know in advance based on our intuition, but like, that person doesn't seem like a good vibe. Trust your vibes on that. Or yeah, that person, when I'm with them, like they just get me. Like I feel like we're gonna be really good friends. Use your discernment on that, because that's where the intuition comes into play. When you are recentered back with yourself, when you have a good sense of self-esteem and self-worth, you tend to trust yourself more and how to read people better and see their true intentions, and you decide whether or not how they're showing up is something that is acceptable for you to allow.
I think I'll also touch on the other side, which is for me, when something triggers me in someone else, oftentimes it is because of my shadow. There's something about them that, especially if it's something I don't like, if there's something, if I do not like somebody, cannot stand them, I have to look at them again, because then I realize there's something about them that I either wish for in myself, meaning that I might be jealous, or I don't like in myself. So that it becomes a very good mirror to try and see, why don't I like this person? What is it people who just grate me like the wrong way? Those are my favorite, because I have to look at them and wonder, what is it about this person that is getting to me? Then I might find that it is X. And if I find that it is X, I can then look at that and then ask myself exactly, is this, am I jealous? Is this something that they are doing that I would like to do? And especially with the shadow is a very interesting thing because, and maybe I'm just using the word, the shadow is the part of you that was repressed as you learned in childhood how to live in adult society. Not even adult, in normal society. So the things, the things you used to do, take any silly thing. Maybe you used to like running around naked when you were 4.
Probably can't do that now.
Then someone told you stop running around naked, put on clothes. And fine, you had to put on clothes because you can't just be running around naked. But maybe there's a part of you that really, really enjoyed running around naked. And that then becomes repressed because you do, oh, Diamond is back. Let me just let her back in. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Welcome back, Diamond. Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
We're
You
talking
you're
about
just in
running
the
around
middle of a
naked.
story about
So
nudity.
we're gonna
Let
let
me
Shira talk
explain.
for a
Wish
second.
she's not come back now.
Okay.
Let me explain. I'll take it
Okay.
2 steps back.
Okay.
I was talking about, we were talking about, what were we talking about? The things that trigger us in other people. And then I was just talking about the shadow. So I was just explaining that there are often times when I'm triggered by somebody, it could be because there's something in them that I want for myself, I'm jealous, or that I see in them that I don't like in myself. So I was just explaining what this shadow piece within us is. And I was saying that it is a repressed part of you. And the example that came to mind somehow is the example of if you liked running around naked when you were 4, that was the best thing in your life. You just loved running around the house naked, and then you were told you should not run around the house naked, and you were forced to put on clothes. And fine, you came to understand that in society, polite society, you have to put on clothes. But maybe there's a small part of you that didn't like that. It still wants to run around naked. So that is the shadow, the part of you that had to be repressed to be able to live in everyday society. And is still there, deep inside, still resentful, wanting to come out in the light of day. And if that was it, then perhaps I don't know what you can do if it was you could well, I guess swim, but that's really not the same thing. But at least it has some kind of element in that, because what they say is that these repressed parts of you will come out. They as when you're not looking, there's something about it that will come out. You'll one day do something that you yourself don't understand. You'll have a reaction and you look at it and wonder, why did I do that? What happened? It could be your shadow finding means of coming out. And there are different things. I mean, that was one example, but there could be whatever it is that you were told to stop doing when you were young, part of it might still be there. So a long explanation to say that sometimes when I see something in someone else, even if it's not something good, maybe they are, I don't know, another bad example that I'll take here because it's just come to mind is bullies. Maybe this person is a bully and, they are rough and gruff and they just, have no respect for anybody and they talk badly. And it could be that there is a part within me, the shadow part, that admires that wants to be a, but because I have been taught that in society that is not how to live, then I've quieted that part of me down. So it's very important to try and figure out what these things are and find them a way into daily life. If it's that aggression, take up boxing, take up judo, take up wrestling, take up. So a very long explanation to just say that there can be triggers that are for you to see within yourself that you need to bring out as well. Mm. Yeah. Cool.
What
So
would
if,
you say to? Oh, sorry.
no, 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 please go on.
What would you say to someone who feels like they almost fear their shadow self? Like there's some shameful maybe desires or behavior there, and like how would you go about encouraging people to still take a look within
Yeah.
despite that? Yeah.
If I go first, I mean, I'd say that seeing it is very difficult. So if you know what your shadow is, that is already the battle partly won. Because again, if I take the example of the nudity, you can have your own little striptease in your house. Then in the comfort of your home, you can do whatever. So, but at least when you see it, when you know what it is, you can be creative in finding ways of letting it out. Because if you don't let it out in consciously in a way that you yourself are aware of, then it will do little things that might embarrass you. You might find yourself doing something that you do not understand. So I'd encourage the person who is ashamed of it to look at it, to just see what is it about them that comes out, and to question the shame depending on what it is that their interest is. It might be that it was shamed because of beliefs that this person is no longer aligned to. So question the beliefs, question the shame. And if it is really, really odd, just try. It doesn't need to be, if you like, I don't know what other example there is. There can be so many outways to things. If you I don't know what other example I can have. There's none coming to mind now. But just that it need not be exactly what you are doing. You do not need to do exactly what it is you are doing then, but you can find another means of bringing it out that is more acceptable generally, or you can do it in private. Mm.
Yeah.
I think that comes back to fully like accepting ourselves, like all parts of ourselves. Because when we feel like we have to hide parts of ourselves and not accept ourselves fully, it's hard for us to really show up authentically with other people because we don't fully accept ourselves. And so when we don't fully accept ourselves, we're likely to energetically match with somebody who doesn't accept us either. And when we're accepting every part of every aspect of ourselves, like growing and things like that, we tend to attract people who into our lives that are very accepting of us and we're accepting of them. So I feel like when you are when you are accepting, like you tend to just see that other people are accepting of themselves and they're authentic and just I don't know, it's just like a vibe thing. Like you can just see it. You see it because it's who you are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back to it always goes back to yourself at the end of the day. That's what I believe.
Yeah,
I think when
absolutely. Because I feel like even with people who maybe aren't the most compatible, or someone who you maybe didn't um I don't know, like an ex you just didn't like or something, um just kind of putting giving yourself kind of the power to know, like, that's kind of where you were energetically too, you know, and there were like parts of them that maybe for some reason, you know, you were drawn to. um and I know for me at least, like, that's been pretty empowering, knowing that like there's some, like, I have some agency here. Like if I want to be around other people, or there's a certain different type of person I desire, like I know that if I sort of display those traits and do the inner work and bring myself to that frequency, it's only natural that I'm also going to attract people on that frequency. So yeah, I do agree. It ultimately does come back to yourself. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Yes, Nikki.
I was gonna say, so as well, I think with like going back to subjects of shame, if you can be vulnerable with somebody that you trust, like either like a trusted friend or family member, but just know that you can really, really trust them, and or like someone like a healthcare professional, like a mental health care professional, or even just God or the universe, and be vulnerable and open up about whatever it is, because I think if you keep it shut down and in secret, that's when it breeds, and it needs like secrecy to carry on being shame. But if you can like share it with someone or something and get it out, then and look at it rather than just pushing it down, I think that's definitely the road to healing. You can do that.
Hmm.
And forgive yourself as well.
Yeah, which ties, especially that last point. It's something you touched on, Alex, on pouring into your own cup. In my journey, it had never been obvious. If I didn't know I needed to start an inner work journey until I started it. How, because I do feel that it's difficult for someone who's living their day to day, doing whatever it is they do on the normal. How do they know that they have some growth points? I don't know if my question is making sense. How do you tell that you need to pour into your own cup, that you're not pouring into your own cup?
You're depleted. You
Mm-hmm.
hate what you're doing. You hate your job. You hate where you're at. You hate the people around you. You're just not loving life.
You're not
you're
thriving.
just you're just not vibing. You're not aligned. I think that's the biggest sign right there. And you're like, something's gotta give because if I keep doing this, I'm gonna be miserable, right? So it's like just being honest with yourself. It's like I'm hating everything right now. Like I don't even like who I am.
Mm,
So I think you kind of reach a breaking point and just like you're kind of just fed up with what's going on in your reality and like where you're at and what's happening, and you're like, okay, something's got to give. And I think you have to look inward and do that inner work and see how this even came to be. And it kind of comes back to yourself again. And were you living authentically? Did you get that job because you actually wanted it, or because you were told like you should get that job because it's a prestigious role? Um, or you need to strive for these XYZ goals, but they don't fully feel aligned to you, and you were, doing that to appease others in society, but you were kind of going against yourself. And then you realize you're like, who am I even? Like, what do I even want? You start to really ask yourself these questions. And sometimes people don't really know themselves until later because they may not have had that opportunity or that agency when they were younger, or given that space to really have their own identity and their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own goals. And it was just kind of placed upon them. So when they're an adult, they're like, well, how did I get here? you know?
Mm. Mm.
I think a lot of people don't even know, do they? I know that I, for years, just felt like there was something fundamentally wrong with me, and I had no idea what to do about it or where to even start. So I think it was just with counselling that I ended up starting and realising like what the problem was, and then from there like going on this like inner work journey. But some people, I think it takes like what Alex was saying about reaching that breaking point, or they can just go through their lives, can't they, without ever doing anything and just just stay the same and not even realise that you can do inner work. A lot of people.
It takes courage, though, that's for sure. I will say that because it's so easy to stay in the known and stay in the safe route because everyone you may know is doing it, and you feel like you're the only weirdo that's like having a midlife crisis. But trust me, you're not the only one. You're just brave enough to actually do something about it. And
Yeah.
I do think that there's other, once you kind of go through that, I do believe like you'll attract more like-minded people. In the case, like with us, all of us here are who we attracted each other. And it wasn't like a conscious thing. It was like kind of as a byproduct of this whole inner work journey. It wasn't like, I'm gonna consciously manifest like all this stuff. No, it just happened. It just happened. It just unfolded. But I think it's just like following, what felt right. And you're like, okay, well, these people feel aligned, and this just all made sense. So, but it takes finding yourself, being authentic to yourself, and following your passion and your joys, and listening to your heart to find people that are on the same journey as you.
Yeah. And I'm reading, or just finished, a book called A Woman Is No Man by Ita Froome. And it was really interesting because it touched to the point of beliefs. So it's a book about women in the Palestinian background not being allowed to come out more fully as women, so being taught that they are less than. And it made me think of the African context where that's a very common teaching. So from age zero, that the teaching can often be that you're less than. And I think it's not only in those societies, I think in society generally today, it is the teaching across the board. If you look at even the corporate space and you look at the mix of male to female, the the female number is so little that the teaching then just becomes that you're less than. So it's possible that society, culture, beliefs, everything that you have around you has disadvantaged you. That was absolutely the case for me. This feeling of being less than came from everything that I saw around me. And if that's the situation you're in, then it becomes difficult to see anything else because that was the reality that I had around me. Then it's it's if the situation that you're in is like what Alex was explaining, that you're just everything around you, you don't like anything that's going on in your life, then one of the things that can help is to look elsewhere, which is partly what helped me to look elsewhere and to see how other people do it. Is this reality that I have everyone's reality? And in this era of social media that lets us get an easy peek into very many different people's lives. I mean, of course, there is Instagram that's curated and what have you, but if depending on what it is that you believe and that you've been burdened by, it could be that just looking around, moving around, seeing different people, seeing different things can help you get a perspective, even on things that you didn't realize were beliefs that you'd had that were wrong. Because that's one of the things with beliefs. It's really, even that, questioning a belief is hard because you don't necessarily think of it as a belief. You just think that this is the way the world is. so that's also a step that can be taken, looking out, finding things. And when you do find a belief, whatever belief, I say question any belief. I'm writing with a green pen because there's a friend of mine who said in school we were writing with blue pens. And he asked why were we writing with blue pens in school. So he started writing with all manner of color of pens. And that's just that, as simple as that, but broadening my mind's space to be able to write in green. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in terms of like identity, like stepping into new identities can be empowering, but there's also like sometimes feeling restricted by the identities that you already have on you. So I feel like when you're kind of reaching that breaking point, um, I feel like there's a chance, I know for me, that I've kind of gotten there because I identified with all these things. Like I'm a person in the military, I'm a person, your job title, you just have all of these identities kind of on you, all these labels. And I know for me, it wasn't until I took a step back and was just like, almost like, and meditation certainly helps with this, but kind of quieting the mind and almost kind of becoming an observer of your circumstances rather than being the person with all these different identities. Kind of just like taking a step back, kind of putting a bird's eye view on your life. For me, that really empowered me to kind of sort through like, well, what do I want to hold on to? What is actually aligned? What's not aligned? Because the truth is you have the freedom to change at any moment, really. So yeah, and even honestly, that's kind of a regular practice. Like if I ever kind of just feel like I'm stressed or I'm really in the muck of some sort, just giving myself the time to like physically like step back and breathe and get back into the body, out of the mind, kind of make sure everything is operating um, on a more like bodily sensory level, and kind of making choices from there instead of all of these different identities. And I will say sometimes once you kind of do that, sort of taking the concept of identity and using it to your advantage can be strong. Um, so it's kind of like a step-by-step process of like identifying and having the awareness, cultivating the awareness, then sort of like letting go of any beliefs that, like identifying any limiting beliefs and any identities that you're holding on to, kind of letting those go. And then now that you have space, because you've just let all of those go, you can create, and then you can create those new identities. And for me, even asking those questions like, like what would the dream version of, like what would my dream woman do, or how would like a more confident, the confident diamond, handle the situation. um and there's just so many ways to have fun with that, whether it's like new names, an alter ego, different archetypes. There's just so many ways to play with that. And so um yeah, I don't know, this whole process can be really fun. In my experience, it usually is, whether it's like stepping to the savage side, or whether it's, yeah, you have your alter ego. I'm Crystal now, I'm going out, I'm Crystal tonight. Like whatever you have to do. Or even like with you, Nikki, I'm sure sometimes, I know for me, like I'm a creative person too, and if I ever feel like stage fright or like nervous, kind of stepping into like an alter ego kind of helps. Yeah, I'm sure you probably know more about that, but yeah, that came to mind. So
I think Nikki made a video about like, alter ego or like stepping into an alter ego or something like
Yeah.
that. I was like, oh yeah, that's totally Nikki. She got that.
Oh, lovely. Just a question on, because I think you've touched on something very important. Because one of the problems in stepping into an alter ego is, in my mind anyway, letting the people who know you. So you have people every day you've been stepping up like this is me. Then suddenly you're Superwoman. So how how do you deal with that? How do you manage the
um okay, for me personally, um I think kind of those conversations, like I'm a pretty playful, laughy person. So I kind of just straight up tell them what it is in a very like um lighthearted way. And in my experience, it's totally well received. Like people are usually on board, and people honestly usually, it levels them up too in a way, because it's almost like you're giving people permission to question how we're moving. Like, let me think. So for my mom, she's a very spiritual woman. So if I'm ever like, all right, mom, I'm different now, and I get so dramatic with it because that's just my personality. She's like, okay. But like, it just makes me kind of, um, just making that the normal in your relationships, like transformation, change, leveling up, evolving, like that's just normal. So, and there's a quote, I'm gonna totally mess it up, but the idea was like love is, um, kind of just like falling in love, or like loving and re-celebrating all the different versions of someone. And I think about that all the time. Like I know when I love someone or I have friends, like I always want to give them the space, grace, and agency to level up or do what they need, and always never feel like I have someone pegged. So it kind of starts within too, instead of kind of just pointing fingers like, hey, I'm Crystal now, like get with it or get lost. Like you could do that. Or you can maybe give people sort of the opportunity to get to know the new version of you, and vice versa, if they're on a similar journey. Um, because I know for me, I have to, manage that within myself. When I speak to friends and stuff, I'm always asking like, what's new, or what's, I'm not assuming I know everything, it's like giving people, because I think that can be dangerous. If you're always assuming like people are the same and stagnant, then that might be the result. But if you almost go into conversations and, when you catch up with friends or family, going in with like a, let me reintroduce myself to them and let me see where they're at now, like what's the newest version of them, like where are they at, kind of going in with that mentality, I think just kind of sets the tone. And it happens very, it's like very subliminal, like it's very like, it's not you, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. It can just kind of be you showing up different, you inviting people to show up different, and then it kind of just naturally happens. That's been my experience so far. And then if for whatever reason you decide to like work out or like make positive changes and someone is getting weird about it, then that's strange. It's like very clearly strange behavior. Um, so you can either question that, like, why are you upset that I'm working out? Or like, why are you upset that I'm trying to do better? That's weird. Um, but also maybe take it a compassionate route and empower them. Because I find, if I'm just going to be honest, sometimes, I interact with people, and if they're jealous, like there's typically, because there's a part of them that maybe aspires to do something I'm doing. And so again, I always just try to give people permission, like, do you want to go to the gym with me? Like, what's going on? Like, or what are you interested in? Like, because everyone has their own journey. And so if I'm aligned and that's triggering people around me because they're maybe disaligned, they can be aligned too. So maybe just empowering them to get aligned as well. And through those conversations, stronger connection can happen. So I would not, I that is not something to be afraid of. If someone is afraid of leveling up because they're afraid their peers might think strange things, like, nope. If anything, it's going to strengthen your connections and everyone's going to level up. So yeah, but that's a good question. I'm sure I've struggled with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point though about being like, if you have the attitude that it's okay for other people to change and that you're accepting that, I think it's more likely then that you're going to attract those other people, or you're going to give them permission to like accept you as well when you're leveling up. It's really good.
I've always believed that, not always, but I feel like I've stepped into that belief that me shining bright in my own light and being my most authentic self is going to be of service for other people, because dimming my light never did anybody good. Didn't do me good, didn't do the people around me any good. So I think the best change and the best example of it is by us ourselves doing the inner work, being our best version, and that inspiring other people to be their best version of themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I think we've covered what we had in mind for today. And I'll give us all a challenge and then I'll start it off myself. So we are talking about letting go of the past and we're talking about inner work. So one inner work activity that would help our viewers in letting go of the past. And you think as I try and pull one out of the air. So one inner work activity that would help someone. What have I done? In helping me let go of the past, I have I've given myself permission to prioritize myself. That for me was quite a task. And how did I do it? I think it started with affirmations, probably. Just an affirmation, looking at myself in the mirror and telling myself that you are worth it. You got this. You are important. So that is one task for our viewers if they want to do that. Who wants to go next?
I guess I'll go next. I would say for me, I'm a very communicative person. And for me to like let go, I have to talk things through. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to talk to that person or talk to somebody, but more so the fact that I need to vocalize it out. Like, if you don't say things, if you don't let it out, it stays stuck within you. So let's say I'm hurt by somebody and then I just want to energetically let that go. What I'll do is, like, I will imagine them in front of me and like telling them how I feel, and may start off angry, for example. And then through that, I work through that emotion and I'm actually really sad. And then through that sadness, I end up kind of letting everything go. And then I almost feel compassionate for the other person because they did the best that they could. And I just imagine just like having like a conversation and working energetically, that energetic cord, and like letting that go. Because I feel like if we don't work through that, we take that with us moving forward in other dynamics with other people.
That's great. I'll go next. Um, for me, and I hope this isn't too abstract, I'm going to try to explain it. for me, almost letting myself feel the discomfort, like on a physical level. So circling back to the donut example, like when and this can be, but this can really work for anything, whether it's how someone makes you feel. It's just easy to think about how food makes you feel because that's so, like, everyone's experienced that. But kind of sitting with those emotions and almost like naming them. So with the donut example, like naming, like, I feel bloated, this feel, but like almost letting myself really like sit with the emotions and giving myself like that immersive experience with it. And it's definitely uncomfortable, but it's really valuable because I think it almost like trains your body to like be able to detect that sort of feeling more. And so like I don't know, to me that's a good, it's inner work because it feels like you're quite literally training your body. And once you just feel that discomfort and you're almost like programming your mind to associate like whatever your external reality is that you want to let go with those negative feelings, it's like you're creating a very strong link from like a neuroscience perspective. And so kind of sitting with that and just being like, yeah, this really sucks. Yeah, this is why I want to let go of whatever. Yeah, and just really letting yourself feel that and really just letting yourself not like it. And kind of working through it. Because then to me, it empowers me because it's like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then I think of all of the things that I do want to feel, but you have to do the icky part first. You can't just jump. A lot of people probably want to jump to the, oh, what does it feel to be in my dream? Have my dream man, have my dream body. No. Okay, you gotta start slow. You have to start with why do you have to let go first? Because again, you have to like let go to make room for the new. So to let go is to really, I'm a very embodied person, so kind of doing that exercise, like that physical, and I honestly get really into it. Like I get really imaginative, like with the food example, like I imagine like a boulder in my stomach, like just getting super hyperbolic and super exaggerative. And and yeah, just really sitting with that and giving myself the sensory and the imagery, because for me that really helps me like remember. um and then kind of like once I do that, kind of go to the end that I more so want to aligned with, so like feeling light as a feather, or um super energized, or if we're talking about relationships, like feeling really respected, feeling really loved, feeling really celebrated. But again, these are feelings, so I think, at least for me, if anyone out there is like me, where I tend to really intellectualize things and I want to do the journal prompts, and those are all great. But sometimes I get caught up here. So kind of bringing it down to the body helps me personally. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
I think for me personally, it's been forgiving myself and forgiving other people. So just knowing that things I've done in the past are from my conditioning, and that yes, I regret them, but I did the best that I could do at the time, and just really forgive myself and let that go, and keep on forgiving myself for silly things that I do in the present time as well. And then the same applies to other people, like knowing that they could only do their best due to their level of consciousness. They were acting out of that. And so just letting that go and not holding any resentment against those people. Because if you're just holding that resentment, then it's like you're replaying that emotion over and over and over again in your own mind and your own body. And it's going to have a bad effect on you. Like, I think someone said it's like wishing your enemy harm is like drinking poison and hoping that they're going to die, kind of thing. So you're actually harming yourself, harboring onto those emotions. So yeah, just letting go and forgiving, like a major one.
So
So,
true.
so powerful. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is great, girls. I think we're just about to wind up. Does anyone have any last thought that they now would like to get out before we go?
Don't freak out when the full moon comes around. Stay in your power.
I'll remember.
Really.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone else?
That was amazing.
It was. So thank you, girls. This was great, and thank you for watching. We appreciate you for spending your time with us. This is the Coaching Circle, and we shall see you next week. Thank you.